Kia ora, everybody. It's awesome to sit down and catch up with Chris Desmond. We meant to do this a few months ago, but both of us, with being new fathers, got a bit held up, so that was all right. I met Chris through Logan Law, Ben Logan, who we had on early on. I set up a bit of a Facebook page for young blokes and met Chris through there and listened to a few of his podcasts, especially with Dr. Greg Emerson, who's another dude involved with Logan Law. Chris, what did you do this weekend, mate?
This weekend? Oh, what did I do? They all kind of blur into one at the moment, I'm sure, as you know, as a new dad. But there was a lot of time with the family.
Yeah.
There were a few dog walks interspersed in there. There was a wee bit of exercise, and also there was a bit of prep for a workshop that I'm putting on in a couple of weeks as well. So dipping my fingers in a lot of different things.
Nice, a lot to unpack there. The dog, it's a greyhound. Is it any specific greyhound or just a greyhound?
Just a greyhound. So she's a retired racer.
Nice.
I don't think she raced that much, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but we've had a bit of a look through her racing history online and haven't been able to find anything. So she definitely trained, but she's a little bit of an introverted dog. So I don't know how she'd go with the racetrack environment. So we kind of think she probably got there and then was like, nah, this isn't for me. So, but we've had her for coming up on a year now, actually, and she's kind of just hanging out over the other side of the room. So that's why the eyes are darting over there for your viewers on YouTube. But yeah, she's really coming out of her shell in the last couple of months, which has been cool because she was quite timid to start with.
Nice. What motivated you to get a dog?
So my wife has always wanted a dog, and she finally wore me down. And no, it was in my wedding vows.
Oh wow!
So it was a promise that I had to keep, and I was a little bit apprehensive about it to start with. Actually, it'd been a while since I'd had a dog. I think our last dog died when I was about 7, so I don't really remember her too well. And yeah, it just kind of been the wearing down slowly of me. But then we went up to it's a place called Greyhounds as Pets, where they have a whole lot of retired racing greyhounds for adoption. So we went up there and met a couple of dogs, and Fox was the one that chose us and the one that we liked, and brought her back. And as I said, we've probably had her for about 11 months now, and she just makes life better. I think it's just having a dog in the house, and I definitely changed my life for the better having her around, which is cool, especially because I was a little bit apprehensive about everything that owning a dog would or having a dog would entail beforehand. Yeah.
And so you've done a little bit of running, and that's long distance, whereas a greyhound's sort of one for the sprint. How is she a companion for on a jog?
She kind of trots along beside me, like if I'm pacing it, she'll get into a little bit of a canter. She doesn't tend to on the footpaths, but if we go down to the park, she, like if I break into a sprint, she'll gallop along beside me. But yeah, it's when you take her down to the dog park and you can let her off leash, that's pretty impressive, mate. Like, we've got a local dog park here, and there's a reasonably busy road that runs alongside it, and she'll kind of go and have a bit of a sniff around, and then she'll go over to the fence line beside the road, and then this car will come along and she'll start running along beside it, and you're like, that is quick. And she's outpacing the cars here, and I mean, in fairness, they're kind of going about 50k an hour, but it's bloody impressive to watch as she starts to pull away from them, and all the other dogs there just kind of they don't even bother,
it's the sprinter and amongst the weightlifters are just like, let's stay away from that.
Yeah, definitely.
So you said you were prepping a seminar. What's going to be these seminars that you're going to be putting in?
Oh,
First one, am
yeah.
I right?
It is the first one. Yeah. So I've been podcasting with Uncomfortable is Okay for just over 2 years now. And I've got to the point where, like, I've had so many amazing conversations with people and have had so much great advice and so many strategies given to me about people being able to step out of their comfort zones that I wanted to give a little bit more back, and kind of collate some of the awesome conversations that I've had into a workshop for people. So basically, the title of it is called Surmount, and that's a working title, but it's about kind of overcoming challenges. So it's really for people who are a bit stuck at the moment, and that might be that they're stuck because they're just in a little bit of a rut. They don't really know where to go or what to do. Or it might be that they've got a great idea, but they just can't overcome the discomfort of starting it off and getting moving with it. So it's about sitting down and defining what your comfort zone is, then picking a way to strategically get out of your comfort zone. And then what we'll do in the workshop is we'll work through the plan of how to go about that, including and especially kind of focused on the potential roadblocks and barriers that are going to come up, because doing something worthwhile is never easy. People kind of talk about all the hacks and things that you can do to speed up the process, and yeah, the more that I understand about life, the more I realize that it's really difficult to speed anything up and try and get through things quickly. So yeah, using the strategies that I've learned from all of my guests, and kind of when and where to apply those to overcome the challenges that people are going to be taking on, and working towards kind of a goal and an outcome at the end of it. So it's an afternoon workshop, but we're going to kind of keep in contact with everyone through an online community afterwards, just so that we can support each other as we kind of put these plans in place and work through everyone's comfort zones to this challenge. And I've been lucky enough to partner with one of the local float centres in Wellington as well, and they're throwing in a couple of floats for people too, which is pretty cool, because like when you're working through some of the stuff mentally, it's quite challenging and it's quite confronting. So it's nice to have a place that you can go and spend a little bit of time without any distraction to kind of really go deep and have a think about the stuff, but also at the same time hopefully relax around it a little bit too, because every time you step out of your comfort zone, it's confronting. You're going to find that it is a little bit stressful. So it's nice to have a way just to kind of bring everything back down and settle back down as well. So it's really cool that they've got on board with it as well.
Nice. And I've written about my experience with floating, and I got onto that through Tim Ferriss, who kind of motivated me to start a podcast. Most people you talk to about floating, however, are absolutely petrified of the thought of being alone with their thoughts. It's probably going to give them a chance to test their comfort zone in the space of themselves, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, floating's it's an interesting thing to go and do. Like to go and just lie naked in the dark, yeah. in this tank. I mean, you can leave the lights on if you want, but it's a little bit weird, especially if they're kind of changing color on you as well. But yeah, I just remember the first time that I went and did it. I think you're in there for an hour, and it was about 45 minutes till my brain slowed down enough for me just to kind of chill out and relax, just because everything was so busy at the time. But then in saying that, the second one I went and did, like 10 minutes after the music stopped, I just kind of zoned out, and like I'd kind of gather a bit of awareness partway through, and like be aware enough just to think, man, am I still breathing? And then, oh yeah, I am.
No, I was even practicing a bit of breath hold and see what happened. And yeah, the reason why it's in the Tim Ferriss book is because you can, in that sort of state, get into such a deep meditation that your brain starts to produce more tryptophan and you trip out. And it's definitely that sort of way. And like you say, your awareness is so raised. Like, how many times have you done it now?
I've probably done about 5 or 6. So I'm lucky that I'm an ambassador for Floatwell, so I can I just rock down and say, hey, can I have a float?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, jump on in. So it's been good to get a bit of repetition under the belt, and I mean, you find new things every time you go and do it. And like the last couple of times, I've kind of gone in with a question that I want to answer, and it's been quite good to go in and do that. But the thing that I've found is that you don't really want to kind of set yourself a particular thought pattern that you need to go through to arrive at this answer. That, like, I'll go in with a question and the brain will start whirring over with it, and then a couple of minutes later, like, I'm off to the side. I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem like I'm going in the right direction. But then 5 minutes later, it'll sort of swing back around. And actually something that I thought about over here has really come back and influenced it. So it's been an interesting process to go through. And yeah, especially because it had the thought process they're not linear when you're in there, but you kind of get to the outcome, which is probably a nice metaphor for life as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the rise of floating. My girlfriend sent me a Gary Vee podcast the other day, and he's talking about how he thinks that mindfulness is going to be the thing, maybe by 2020, and you see the rise of floats and the people that actually do it, and it's it's impactful. You can definitely see how the mindfulness space is just going to grow and grow and grow, and floating is just part of that.
Yeah, and I think, like, the great thing about floating is that the environment that it puts you in. I was having a conversation with Kevin, one of the owners of the float center, and like, we live in a world where there's so much stimulus that even if you go down and kind of sit in a room and try and be mindful or to meditate, that you've still got a lot of distractions around you. Whereas jumping in a float tank, you're setting yourself up for success straight away, because you've just set your environment to the point where, hey, I can't really be distracted. I'm just here by myself. Don't even have any clothes to, like, rub up against. I've got some walls to bounce off occasionally, though.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We had Lucas Crump from Everyman on, and it's one of his meditation practices, actually, just sit in the nook and meditate. And he said that, I guess it's removing a veil, and like you say, there's nothing there to support you anymore. You're just there alone, and all that's left is thoughts.
Is he an indoor meditator or an outdoor meditator?
No, he said he's an indoor meditator. Although
that'd be next level, eh?
Yeah, although on their expeditions, he probably does give it a whirl with whoever's keen. I guess it's the same as going for a skinny dip with mates, and it's not so much about going for a swim. It's about dropping the veil and everybody having a lot of fun, because there's nothing left to hide.
Yeah, that's true. You don't have that front up anymore.
No. You said about finding the area that's uncomfortable and pushing a comfort zone. The guys at Seed Waikato were super lucky last week to have Daniel Flynn from Thank You come and speak to them, and they got a hell of an audience there, including many of the business community from Hamilton come along, because obviously Daniel Flynn's a hell of a speaker. And that was, in everybody that put up a takeaway, that was one of their biggest takeaways, that growth and opportunity and success is when you push that comfort zone and start to feel uncomfortable. What was sort of the start of your podcast and coming up with the name Uncomfortable Is Okay and exploring these uncomfortable places?
How much time have we got on this
Oh,
one, mate?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll go the long version. I'll try and abridge it a little bit. So this month, it's October today. This month I turned 35. So I grew up in New Zealand in the 80s and the 90s. And as a young Kiwi male, like I had a great upbringing. Me and my family moved around a bit when I was growing up, but we're always kind of in this almost sort of semi-rural environment. So I got to get out and experience a lot of nature, and we always lived close to a beach as well, which was awesome. So like most young Kiwi kids, I was really good at sort of pushing myself physically and getting out of my comfort zone physically. But like a lot of, probably like a lot of young Kiwi males especially, I wasn't very good at getting out of my comfort zone emotionally, or probably not that much mentally either. I was always quite good at school and could get by on a bit of natural talent. So there was a bit of extension that way. But I mean, when you grow up, you're consistently confronted with new experiences and new things. So you have to get out of your comfort zone to some respect going through that. But then I went down to varsity in Otago and did my physiotherapy degree. And once I finished that, like I got my first job up here in Wellington. And for some reason, I figured that, okay, cool, this is it. This is what you work towards while as you're a kid, and as you go through university, this is life. Now I sit down and I do this, and it all sort of comes to me, which is, looking back on this, it's kind of amusing now. It wasn't particularly amusing at the time, but like I just got into this routine of playing sport reasonably socially, going to work, hanging out with mates, partying, just nothing particularly like wrong with that stuff, but sort of dragged on for a couple of years, and then I got injured, so the sport wasn't went out of the equation. So it was just going to work, partying, hanging with mates, and doing things that were pretty repetitive and just kind of the same old.
Mm.
And as I said, that dragged on for a little while, and I got to the point where like I was feeling pretty down about it all, that I just wasn't feeling fulfilled, and I wasn't feeling particularly healthy, and I wasn't probably particularly healthy either, drinking a lot of beer and eating a lot of takeaways. And I didn't really know where to go and what to do as well. As that, like I thought I'd been sold this idea that like once you got a job, then that was it. You just kind of tick the rest of these things off. And I still don't really know why I thought that way. And I guess it probably doesn't particularly matter, but yeah, I just wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. And I figured that, hey, actually, if I want to change anything, I'm going to have to do some new stuff, and it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for me, and it's going to take me out of my comfort zone. I wasn't sure exactly what it was that I wanted to do, but I decided to kind of start to take on a few challenges. So I got back into running and got back into sport a little bit more, and kind of just started putting my hand up a little bit more at work as well, and kind of taking on a little bit more responsibility and things. And they were just small aspects of getting out of my comfort zone, but because I hadn't done it to any great extent for a couple of years, it was much harder than what it used to be, because I hadn't been training myself to my body to do that, or for me to think that way and to take on those challenges. But when I did that stuff, it was hard at the time, but the positive reinforcement that you get back afterwards is awesome. So I was like, wow, all right, there's something to this. There's something to kind of pushing out of my comfort zone and taking on challenges. So gradually kind of things got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was still searching for a bit of meaning and a bit of fulfillment with it as well. That, getting out and going running again was good, but it didn't sort of really stoke the fires of life. So I went and kind of tested out a few things. I was still working as a physio, but dabbling with some other stuff. And one of the things ended up being a Masters of Management. So I did that distance learning. It took me about 3 years to get it done, and it was very interesting. But kind of made me realize that I don't want to be a mid-level manager somewhere for the rest of my life either. But it was quite a different way of thinking. And I got to it helped me realize that like one of the things that I really enjoy is teaching people. And that's one of the things that I love about being a physio as well, is that you get to teach people stuff, and you get to interact with people and provide hopefully very good information to them that helps improve their lives. But also going back and doing this master's kind of reignited my passion for learning as well, that I'd lost probably up until that point after my first degree, that I'd been sort of operating from a really sort of fixed mindset place, that, okay, cool, I've got enough knowledge now, then that's it. Whereas this just sort of opened my mind up just to how much there was that I didn't particularly know. So I knew that I liked teaching. I knew that I liked learning, but also I wanted something that I had a little bit of creative control over, and something that I could kind of put my own direction and my own spin on as well. And so I was talking to a few people, and one of my mates said, why don't you start a podcast? I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Actually, I love listening to podcasts, because I got pretty heavily into them probably over the couple of years I was doing my masters. And like as you know, mate, you don't need to be a tech wizard or have massive amounts of skill sets to create a podcast. You just need to be able to talk semi-eloquently, maybe.
Ask a couple of questions.
Probably not even that. Probably not even that. But everything that everything that you'd kind of read, saying, hey, you actually need to be a little bit niche in terms of the stuff that you talk about in your podcast. But one of the things that I thought about was like, I don't want to talk about the same topic with the same person week in, week out, that I want some variety with it. And something that kept coming up to me was the topic of comfort zones, because I'd been through this process myself, and had kind of worked on stepping out of my comfort zone and slowly doing that further and further and further, and almost training myself to get better at it. I was like, that's quite a cool idea. And the nice thing about it is that everybody has a comfort zone as well. And everyone's comfort zone is different, no matter kind of what walk of life that you come from. One of my favorite stories from a podcast guest is, I was interviewing a burlesque dancer once. And so obviously she's pretty comfortable kind of getting up and dancing around stage with not much on. But she's absolutely terrified of driving. Just think that, okay, cool, that's would be the opposite way around for most people. But it's great to sort of be able to hear those stories and tell those stories, because again, the more that I figure out about life, the more that I realize that there's no one right way to do it. Like, people would tell you that there's one right way to do it, but at the end of the day, you've got to find your own way through things, and you've got to find out what works for you. So if I can bring a whole lot of different people with different stories together, that are all facing challenges and trying to navigate and overcome discomfort, then hopefully the people that are listening can take one or two bits from each of them, even if they're not going to get up and dance naked around a stage. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea for it. And actually, my work as a physiotherapy came up with the name. That I was, you've been injured many a time yourself, I'm sure, and I'm sure that the people that listen to your podcast are quite familiar with injury as well. So I was rehabbing someone in the gym, and we got to the point where, like, we needed to push it a little bit. We'd settled everything down and we'd started getting them moving, and now it was kind of time to get them back into their regular activity. And I just found myself saying to this person that, hey, I'm going to give you an exercise today, and it's going to hurt a little bit, but that's what we want, that we need to actually stress these tissues out so that they really start to improve and that they start to adapt to what we're wanting them to do. And I said, look, I don't want it to be so painful that you start to cry, but uncomfortable is okay. And I was like, just kind of a light bulb clicked. And I was like, oh, there's the podcast name. And I can't remember what I told that person afterwards. I was probably just too busy patting myself on the back for coming up with a sweet name. But yeah, that's kind of the long-winded story about how the podcast started. And initially it started out as something to kind of just prove to myself, hey, can I do this? Will people actually want to talk to me for a start, and will people want to listen to me, and will it be something that I enjoy, and do I have anything to say that is worthwhile? Because it's something that you're doing I've got a few different letters after my name, but it's something that you're doing that it's separate from that, that I don't have bits of expensive paper hanging up on the wall saying,
I can do this.
You should be able to do this. So it's been an interesting kind of thing to go through with that, and to try and wrap my head around. And I'm about 115 interview episodes deep now. So it's kind of proof that, yeah, people are happy to talk to me about it. And it's definitely proved that it's something that I can sustain as well, which has been nice. And a few people have listened too, which is always good.
Yeah, no, and it's always great when somebody out of the blue messages you and says, "Oh, I really enjoyed that." You know, oh, you listening?
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. Like, it's nice when you hear from people that you haven't heard from for a while, that like that you know previously. But it's also nice when randoms message you as well, that you have no idea. You're like, oh man, that's cool. And I don't know what statistics you get in regards to your podcast, but the host that I use has geographic statistics.
Oh, nice.
So it's cool to be able to see where people are listening from as well. Like, I saw some pop up one day and it's like, people listening in Senegal.
Nice.
And I was like, who do I know in Senegal? It's not one of my bigger markets, but yeah, it's been nice. But strangely, the podcast is quite big in the Isle of Man,
Nice.
which is some the Isles off England. So it's like my fourth biggest market, I think, after New Zealand, the US, and Australia.
Maybe it's that willingness to drive around the Isle and on a motorbike at outrageous speeds that, you know, they think that's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's quite uncomfortable. They're big on long distance race walking there as well. And I've interviewed a few race walkers, which has been I think that's kind of what got them on board, and they've just kind of hung around.
No, I see it. My blog, it always gets a few hits from South Korea, and I think that's just from people searching Stag or something like that, trying to find Dev Albert, I think, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
one, of,
nice.
one of our common guests was Kai Whanu, and I was super lucky to actually meet her in person. She was in the neighbourhood, which was fantastic. And one of the things she talked about with both of us after a back injury and rehabbing that was that there's good pain and bad pain. And I'm probably going through a little bit of that at the moment with moving here. We've got a lot of good pain, like things that we have to slowly work at and slowly get sorted. But for the sake of that, we're getting so much out of it. We're living an amazing lifestyle, but at times you can isolate it and feel painful. And it's the same with raising a child. What did you sort of get out of that good pain and bad pain with talking to Kai?
Yeah, and I think we're like, as a society, we're so pain and discomfort averse that we try and shy away from it. And I mean that's kind of how we've evolved as well. But we live in a time now where everything's kind of very convenient, very safe, and very comfortable.
Yeah.
But there is that we've kind of lost the differentiation between what is good pain and what is bad pain. And I think, like as you alluded to, and as Kai talked about as well, is that to adapt and to grow as a person and as an individual, or to like with my physio hat on, like I think about it as kind of like muscle hypertrophy. If you're trying to build muscles and you're trying to train muscles, that you need to work them hard enough to be a little bit painful most of the time, because when you're building muscle, actually you're damaging some of the muscle fibers, and then they repair and come back stronger and increase in cross-sectional area and grow afterwards. So you need to push into a bit of pain and discomfort to disrupt that muscle tissue so it can repair and grow. But also in saying that is if you push too hard and go too far into pain, then actually you can create some significant damage to yourself that it's going to take a while to come back from as well. With that being said, most of the time, even if you go so far into pain that you wipe yourself out for a while, you can come back from it. That you can rehab and you can work through that. But it's difficult at times to know what is good pain and what is bad pain. And I think like one of the big things that I took away from my chat with Kai was to sit with that pain and try and understand it a little bit, try and understand where it's coming from and what's causing it, but also sit with it and kind of look around yourself for threats as well. Is this actually a kind of a threatening, dangerous pain that I'm sitting with, or is it just some discomfort that I'm feeling either physically or mentally or emotionally that is just from like a potential threat that I have rather than an actual one? And if it's just that potential one, then keep on going, keep working through it. And if it's an actual threat, then maybe what you need to do is, rather than just kind of keep pushing on into it, is change direction slightly. It doesn't mean that you need to go all the way back out of it, but sometimes you need to find a workaround with that pain. And I think it was one of the biggest things that kind of that got me thinking about when I was speaking with Kai.
Absolutely, she's quite an inspirational lady. You said about getting out of uni, and I had the exact same thing. You had this prescribed lifestyle of school, and I'm going to do this, and that's going to get me here, and then I'm going to go to university, I'm going to study this. And I had a little bit of a detour that I needed to do a Bachelor of Science to get into optometry, but it was still, that was the end goal. And when I was finishing that science degree, I was like, well, if that doesn't go to plan, I'm just going to go be a builder, or I'll carry on doing an honours and do some research. But it was still about, I want to become an optometrist. And then you sort of getting to the end of that, and you're getting tired of study, and you get out, and you're like, right, I'm going to work, and then you're working, like, right, so this is it. And what do you think about how that part of your life is so prescribed, but the rest of your life is open and up to your interpretation? And it's just like this, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's something that well, definitely when I was growing up, our education system didn't really prepare you for. It prepared you to go and get a job and to be able to pay taxes, and
Yeah.
but it didn't kind of teach you about sort of a sense of fulfillment or a sense of enjoyment, or how to live a healthy, happy life. And I think that, like, it's really easy to, once you kind of get into work and kind of start to just sort of move along with work and get into a routine, that it's really easy to just get in a bit of a rut, or get like I was listening to someone the other day talk about a concept called the drift.
Yeah.
Like when you're floating in the ocean, or you're floating on a river, and you just kind of get in at a point, and then you just go with the flow and just sort of do the same thing. You're just kind of paddling to keep yourself floating, and then you look up a little bit later, and you're just so far from where you started, but you're kind of nowhere near where you want to be going, because you've just drifted along. And I think life can definitely get like that if you're not paying attention to what it is that you're doing, and if you don't understand what it is that lights you up, or what it is that makes you curious as well. And I think there's a lot of people talk about kind of finding your passion and finding your purpose, which is good if you've got some of them, and that's what you're and you're so passionate that you know what you want to do. But a lot of people don't. And I think, like, talking about that stuff is like, it's good, but also it's like, it gets a lot of people down as well, that you listen to all of these kind of motivational speakers talking about, you've got to find your passion, you've got to find your purpose. And you're like, man, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what my purpose is. And if you kind of get stuck on that, then it's really hard to start to get out of your comfort zone and start to just explore things that you're curious about, so that you might find something that you're more interested in, that you can kind of go on and do a little bit more, and it might turn into a passion, or it might turn into a purpose, or it might actually be 6 months and you decide, oh no, actually I don't like this, I'm going to go and be curious and try something else. And that's not a bad thing at all either, because you've learned some new skills, you've grown as a person as you've done it. It makes you more interesting to talk to at a party. But also there's the stuff that you know now that you didn't know before, about life and about yourself. You can go and apply that to the next thing that you do. So it's not a waste going and trying this stuff. But yeah, it's challenging to do sometimes. And that was quite a rambly answer, and I don't know if that answered your question at all.
I did. I like it. And you say about going to do something. I tried learning to surf last summer, and there's nothing like being a beginner again.
Oh man, it's horrible.
What do you think is important about all of a sudden having a beginner mindset, especially when you've, like in our case, been at uni for such a long time, with a direct, narrow-minded goal to something that you're getting better and better and better at, and you're building up your knowledge base, and then you're a beginner.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why, as adults, in parentheses, I still don't really class myself as an adult, that we find it hard to take on new challenges is because we've developed that certain amount of proficiency in a few different areas. Once you become proficient with something, it almost starts to become easy. Whereas if you go and try something new like surfing, then you're just this rank beginner again. And like with surfing, are we surfing in Australia or are we surfing in New Zealand?
No, surfing in New Zealand, and the waves that are around us here are impeccable, and there's so many people on them. I just no thanks.
Yeah.
Just beginning the road.
But like, you see these little kids that are just carving up, and you're like, oh, what? How are they so good? But I think that with that is one of the reasons that they're so good is that they're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
That they fall over and then they get back up. But in terms of kind of starting as a beginner again, like, there's no easy way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think. I went and I retired from rugby a couple of years ago just because, like, I'd play on the weekend and then I just spend the rest of the week in the gym trying to get the body ready for the next week, and that would go on for 15 weeks of the season, and I'd just be shattered by the end of the season. That had just been, just draining, So I went and played. I was like, okay, right, I need to replace this with something. Otherwise, I would just end up going back and playing rugby again because I still needed to play some team sport. So I went and played. Olympic handball,
Nice.
which is massive in Europe, and it's starting to grow in popularity in New Zealand. But like, I had certain advantages in that I was that I'm reasonably athletic, that I'm reasonably coordinated, and I'd been playing sport for 30 years by that stage. But I went and played with one of the university teams just because I knew a couple of people. Well, I think my cousin was playing for them. And just trying to learn the rules was one thing, but also to teach my body how to move in a different way. And I'm pretty body aware. I teach people how to be body aware, so I should be. But trying to retrain myself out of 20 years of my body moving like a rugby player to moving like a handball player was like, it was challenging physically, but it was massively confronting mentally as well. But it was like one of the best kind of mindset shifts that I found with it was to think about it as like a training my brain. Like, we're all familiar with the concept of training our bodies, but to train my brain, that when I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm creating new neural pathways, or I'm strengthening neural pathways, and I'm kind of just really working on that concept of neuroplasticity, and all the research that's coming out about working on that as an adult, that you're going to make gains with this, that where you're at the moment isn't a fixed level, but also that if you're working on things that are mentally challenging for you, harder than Sudoku, you're going to actually like increase your longevity, but also you're going to be operating at a higher cognitive level when you're older as well. So that's a nice way to think about it, is that actually, hey, I'm doing this, it's hard now, but it's gonna pay off in the long run because I'm training my brain for this. But it still doesn't make it easy to be a beginner.
Yeah, and you say about neuroplasticity, and it's the same with trying to learn a language or doing juggling, mastering
play
instruments, things like handstands, which again, that whole body awareness with where is my center of gravity and line of axis moving, and no, it's always fun. You said with the podcast that it gave you creative control, and especially in a field like optometry or like physiotherapy, which is very scientific, and you're doing an experiment on everybody. You've got a hypothesis, you've got a couple of differential diagnosis that the problem could be, and you do a bunch of tests to figure out what's wrong. It's not exactly creative, it's prescriptive, and that's what you end up with at the end as a prescription for the person. What was your sort of creativity like when you were younger, and what have you sort of felt has changed about you by being creative again?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. When I was younger, I had a few opportunities to explore my creativity that I quite enjoyed writing.
Yeah.
So I used to when I was little, I used to sort of write a lot of stories, and was really into that, and also like put on plays as a kid with your siblings and with the neighbors as well, and performances, which was always good. But that was when I was a bit younger, and then I never learnt an instrument when I was younger, and I think there were a couple of reasons for that. But I think once, when I was singing, someone told me that I couldn't hold a tune, and I took that to heart.
Yeah,
like I never really pursued sort of anything musically. But like I strum a few chords on the guitar now. But my brother is a professional musician, and he, in fairness to him, he is a lot more skilled than I am. But he's also put in tens of thousands of hours to get to where he is. But I kind of look at him and I'm like, I wish I just had picked up the guitar a little bit more when I was younger. But also, like in terms of kind of exploring my creativity, third form art. I failed third form art, man. Just how do you fail third form art? I don't know. I don't know. But I think that that kind of stopped me exploring my creativity, and then I kind of stopped writing as well once I started at high school, and you started having to write for assignments and things too. That my creativity and how I expressed it was more physically through the sports that I played and like the athletics endeavors that I did. And so I hadn't been creative really for a good while before I started the podcast, or not in the way that I wanted to be. And I think like I have really enjoyed the creative aspects of starting a podcast and kind of being able to shape it the way that I want to shape it. And I don't know if it's just the creative stuff that has kind of created this benefit for me, but I find that I'm a lot more sort of open to possibility, and I'm a lot more open to, hey, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could we could do it this way. And I think that it's been a part of it, but there's probably been other things that have contributed to that. So I think that's the big thing that's come from exploring my creativity, is just seeing more possibilities of the world around me and of myself as well.
Nice. I mentioned Seed Waikato, and when we were creating that again, we brought a few people in who sort of looked at design thinking and again being creative in the way that we thought about it, as you say, looking at what are the possibilities, you know, what's the opportunity, can we go here, can we go there, can we go there, you know, what are our assumptions around this, how could we think about it differently, and now you're part of sort of the day-to-day running of your clinic. How do you think that's spilling over into your professional life?
I was running the clinic actually before I started the podcast. I think it's definitely improved me as a physiotherapist, and it's also hopefully improved me as a manager of people as well. I'd have to ask my staff that just to make sure, but hopefully that's yeah, you're all right. But I think it's opened me up a little bit more to other people's stories and other people's experiences, and like, I mean, seeing possibilities and kind of the things that we do at work, and kind of where we can take things, and kind of how we can shape rehab, but also to see that there are other stories than the ones that I'm telling myself about me, but also I'm telling myself about other people as well, and again, just being kind of open to the experiences that other people are going through, and trying to understand, hey, this is something that is different, but the fact that it's different doesn't necessarily mean it's like it's negative in any way. But actually, if I can understand what's going on there from someone else's point of view, then maybe I can offer some advice or some encouragement that's going to help them with a challenge that they're coming across.
Something that I've sort of found is that you start to see the potential in people, and sometimes the potential that they don't see themselves. And I also think that it gives you the confidence to try and influence people in a positive way and help them see their potential. And like, I don't know what it's like for you as a physio, but I'd imagine that, as you said, being injured, a lot of people are sort of down in the dumps, and being able to give them the gift of confidence and reassuring that what they do with you is going to create, you know, so much more. Is do you find that you start to pick out that positivity in people and that opportunity in people, and you feel like they leave your office, you know, inspired or somewhat?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, as a physiotherapist, I probably have an opportunity to maybe sort of influence people a little bit in a slightly different way as well. That, I mean, there's a bit of research that's coming out now that, and it's actually coming out of some guys from Wellington, which is pretty cool. But the messages that health professionals give to patients really influence the outcomes that they're going to get with them. That if you're giving someone positive messages that instill confidence in them, then they're going to get so much better than the people that are getting sort of negative, don't do this, oh, this is really dangerous messages. That those people are quite a significant risk of not getting or not making the gains that these people that receive positive messages are going to. And I think I work with quite a lot of people that have persistent pain, and obviously persistent pain is usually not from it's often triggered by an anatomical injury, but the injury itself typically heals up really well. So there's a lot of this, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on for a person as well, that has been influenced by the messages that they've been given, and by the environment that they're in at the time of their injury. So if we can shape the stories that we tell people to give them confidence in their ability to get better and their body's ability to adapt, because the body is a bloody amazing thing, that if you do the right stuff for it, who knows where your potential is going to be. But as you say, it's kind of opening them up to the potential of what they can do. That actually, this is, you've had a decent injury, but there's no reason that you can't come back and you can't go on and do things from this, and to give them that confidence, and to give them those messages is really cool, to be able to do that, and to be able to kind of shape how people go and do things, and hopefully sort of at the end of the day how they interact with the world as well. And I think I'm in a sort of a lucky position that I've been a physio now for 12 years, so I've seen a lot of people get better, so it's easy to deliver my message with confidence because I've seen it happen. And also I've been injured so many times myself that, like, I had a plate in one ankle and a rod in the other leg, and I broke my ribs and my collarbone and my arm, and had my thumb wired back together. And like, after all of that stuff, I've gone back and I've played rugby, and I've played handball, and I've run ultra marathons, and I've gone surfing, and I've jumped out of planes and things. And yeah, maybe I'm not quite as quick as I was when I was 18, but maybe I wouldn't have been anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a bit easier for me to speak with confidence about that and deliver those messages to people. But once you can kind of put an example up there for someone, and again, it's kind of a story that you're telling them, that it makes it so much easier for them. But the trick is picking what level you go in at, because some people, like, you can tell them this amazing story, and it'll be one session and they'll be like, oh yeah, sweet, they'll come back next time and they're like, I feel amazing, I'm great. And other times you kind of need to feed it to people over 3 months, 6 months, a year, and take them through it slowly.
You told me off here that you're in quite a lucky position with your clinic, that you work with a lot of other people in the health sphere. What do you see the benefit of creating more of a holistic approach? And like you said, a lot of chronic pain is not necessarily the injury anymore.
Yeah, and I think, like, Western medicine probably over the last 50-ish years has operated from a really biomedical approach. So here's the problem, that's the problem, let's fix the problem. And everything has kind of been in silos, that one profession works on one thing, another profession works on another thing, and another one works on another, and no one talks to each other. But yeah, I'm lucky enough to work with occupational therapists and social workers and psychologists and orthopedic surgeons, and usually not at the same time. But like, one of the benefits as a professional, and being a practitioner in that area, is that you get to share ideas with a whole lot of people outside of your profession as well. Because I'm sure that you find this with optometry as well, is that, I mean, there's a difference of opinion in optometry, but a lot of optometrists tend to approach a problem from the same way, because that's the training that they've gone through. Potentially that's the kind of person that they are as well. So you're bringing your own biases to it. But when you sit down with someone from another profession and you're able to have a conversation about a problem, and they come up with an idea that you've never thought about, because you haven't had that training, you haven't had those life experiences, and you don't look at problems that way, that you just think, man, my mind is blown, because you've just seen something completely different that I've missed, that actually now you've mentioned it is right there, and it's a great idea. So it's, as a professional, it's great to be able to share ideas and start to understand how to provide rehab better. But from a patient perspective as well, is that again, like if you're working in a holistic approach with, and it's still good to have specialties, and it's still good to have people who specialize in certain areas. I mean, you wouldn't want me operating on performing a surgical procedure on your knee or on your back at all, but it's good to have people that work in that environment so that they can pick up any things that may be a problem, and rather than just kind of pushing on blindly, say, hey, actually, you've got this going on. Let's get you over to see the psychologist or the occupational therapist, or go and see the surgeon, and then come back and see me afterwards, because I think that'll be really helpful for you at this point in time. But also kind of working in an environment with all of those different people, especially like if you're talking to them, is that you kind of understand the way that you deliver rehab, and kind of what you're trying to work towards for the patient is to get them, like from a rehab point of view, basically to get them back to what they want to be doing, and hopefully get them back doing it better than they could before. That if someone does need to go and see multiple people, then you're all actually delivering them the same positive message, so that they're not getting conflicting advice, unless of course they need it and there's something kind of going wrong, that they're like, oh no, actually let's get you in for surgery or something like that. But that if you go and see like a range of different people that are in no way connected to each other, then you're going to get massively different opinions, and often you'll come out and you'll end up being quite confused about things, and you'll never be able to work through it, and or you really struggle to work through it and move forward. Whereas if you got the same people who are all striving for that same outcome, then they can offer different types of reassurance along the way for that person to keep them moving forward and keep them working towards that goal.
Absolutely. And you hopefully won't come across massively conflicting dogmas as well, and like I say, get that, no, that's wrong. yeah.
And I think like as you work in that space as a professional, you kind of understand what the other professions are all about as well. And you learn to identify things that actually might be roadblocks or might be problems. Like someone, say for example, someone comes in to see me with some pain or with a problem, and I'll assess them and I'll be like, well, actually, I think you're okay, but let's get you over to the orthopedic specialist to have a quick look at this, just to make sure, before we push on too much. And if you didn't know what the orthopedic specialist did, or if you didn't, if you didn't know what they did, and if you didn't know what they were looking for, then maybe I wouldn't have identified that, and maybe I would have just tried to push through it, and it would have been detrimental for someone further down the track. So that communication at that point hopefully alleviates any of those conflicts later down the track.
Absolutely. Mate, where do people find your podcast, find you, and probably where do they find this clinic, mate?
Sweet. They can find my podcast. It's called Uncomfortable is Okay. So on whatever podcast app that you listen to podcasts on, Uncomfortable is okay on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I tweet occasionally. It's Chris Desmond NZ, or Chris Desmond on LinkedIn. And the company that I work for is called TBI Health as well. So I manage the clinic just north of Porirua, just out of Wellington, but we've got clinics all around the country as well. So if people want some rehab, then highly recommend it.
And we've actually heard about TBI Health before. Our episode with Eddie Rakanui around concussion, he was very, very thankful for the work that you guys had done with him in recovering from bad concussions. So yeah, mate, what's something that you'd like to leave people with, a mantra for you, or an ask of the audience, or I don't know, a quote or something that you live your life by?
I mean, the title of the podcast is always a good example, is that uncomfortable is okay. But I think an ask of the audience today is just to spend 5 or 10 minutes sitting down and having a think about where they might like their life to go. And that might be in 3 months' time, that might be in 3 years' time, it might be in 30 years' time. But actually have a think about that and identify one thing that is going to take you a little bit closer to that, but is a bit of a stretch. It's something that you pretty sure that you can do, but isn't going to be comfortable for you. Might be jumping on that surfboard with all the groms out in Australia, or something similar, and then go and do it. Don't pick something that's going to overwhelm you and kind of just wipe you out and make you lose all motivation, but something that's just a little bit beyond your reach at the moment.
Nice, mate. This was awesome to finally get done. I don't know how long we've been trying to jack it up, but we finally got it. Thank you so much for coming on board, and we look forward to seeing where Uncomfortable is okay goes. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate. My pleasure.
Awesome.